Okay, next we have Havin Guneser, who is an engineer. She is a spokesperson for the international initiative Freedom for Abdullah Öcalan Peace in Kurdistan. Her paper is entitled Constructive and Peaceful Solution to the Kurdish Question in Turkey.
Okay, I'd also like to thank everybody who put their time and resources in order to make this conference possible. Because as the previous speakers have pointed out, there has been a struggle of the Kurdish people in the near past history of 40 years, and as a result, much has changed. Therefore, I would like to also get into perhaps not what the question is, but what the solution to the question may be. Now, I'm from the International Initiative Freedom for Abdullah Öcalan Peace in Kurdistan. Our offices are in Cologne, Germany. What I'd like to go through today is just a brief introduction to what International Initiative is, and then a little on who Öcalan is, because these are some of the fundamental things that we need to go into to see how the question can be resolved. And again, as I said, I would like to go one step further, as some of the speakers did, and define the solution instead of leaving the Kurds between the victims as well as criminals or terrorists. There is another side to Kurds, and this is the fact that they want to build a future for themselves based on principles and ethics that they are laying down. So, what's the International Initiative? We were in fact established in 1999 after Öcalan was brought from Kenya to Turkey as a result of an international plot, the Kurds would like to call, and they have declared that day as a Black Day. And so it's a multinational peace initiative founded by several Nobel Peace Prize winners, and as well as many other personalities throughout the world, around the world. Now, our vision is a just peace for Kurds and Turks and other peoples, a political solution through talks and negotiations, and freedom for Öcalan and all political prisoners in Turkey. And mind you, it's a little bit of a great vision, thinking of what 99 looks like in terms of geopolitical situation of the world and the Middle East, as well as the situation back in 1999, the prejudices within Turkey, as well as the reaction of the Kurds as to what had happened. But we're seeing today more and more people are sharing this vision with us. Freedom of Öcalan and the political prisoners, as well as a status for the Kurds, are not so far off the agenda anymore. What do we do about it? We inform about the imprisonment conditions. It is unfortunate that my paper is not titled as such. I would have liked to gone into the legal status of the Imralı Island prison. This is really a hot issue, I think, for you law students. It's a legal limbo, which I will maybe go into shortly as I describe it a little bit. But we also translate and publish books and brochures in English and other languages. Maybe you saw some of the brochures and the books just outside. And we also campaign, as I pointed out, for Öcalan's freedom as a key step to peace and democracy, and I will go into why. Okay, who is Öcalan? Well, it can mean lots of things to many people, but I think it may be wise to see what it means for the Kurdish people. As I said, the struggle of the Kurdish freedom movement began around about 40 years ago, to be precise, in 1973. By then, everybody had thought that the Kurds were neatly put away, not only in Turkey, but more or less everywhere else. And so he is seen as the Kurdish people, as the man with his friends, of course, and of course with a lot of um, time and labor put in by the Kurdish people themselves, but the person to steer Kurds away from the brink of non-existence, annihilation, to a point where they are determining the future of the Middle East, and maybe even give an alternative to the nation-state problem we're having, not only in the Middle East, but throughout the world. So he's the founder of the PKK, of course, but he's also the person responsible for ideological and organizational transformation of the movement since 1973. This meant, because 1973 was a group formation, and the party, the PKK, as a political ideological organization, was formed in 1978. And in 1984, 6 years later, the armed struggle began. So he had a decisive contribution with the grouping, as well as the formation of the party, as well as the armed struggle, and the transformations that were to take later. And of course, he's a political prisoner, one of the most infamous and famous, held in total isolation. Let me give you a little bit of a rundown on the facts of the isolation. This is what I meant by it being really interesting. We call it, as the international initiative, the European Guantanamo, because it is it's a military island, basically. And in 1999, there's more than 1,000 soldiers guarding the island. And in 1999, when Mr. Öcalan was taken there, there was a state of emergency act which is enshrined in the Constitution, where you could declare this kind of a situation, crisis management center, where you could handle situations like this. And but this was more used for natural, like earthquakes or things like that. But this was used for Mr. Öcalan as well, and the island was managed by this crisis management center, which was not even informed. The European Council of Europe, was not even informed about this. Now, Öcalan was, for more than 10 years, the only prisoner. We talked a lot about the European Court of Human Rights. I'd like to point out that the Kurdish people had no legal recourse anywhere in the world. The UN has turned a blind eye. The Kurds have not been able to lodge any applications there, because they have been left at the mercy of the 4 countries that occupied it. And then The Hague, you have to be a state to be able to apply to there. And there is only the European Court of Human Rights that is left, which a lot of brave lawyers from Kurdistan, with a lot of courage, put their life on line and took the first cases, in fact, to the European Court of Human Rights. Although this is no remedy, and they knew this would not bring the final solution to it, but it was a way of showing the problems that was occurring in Kurdistan. Otherwise, if the Kurds were really able to go to any court, I'm sure they will very quickly, hands up, prove that there has been a war against humanity that occurred in Kurdistan, in all parts, not just in Turkey. So individuals took their cases, just the same as Öcalan, but I have to tell you that Öcalan had an isolation case against the Turkish state for the last 10 years, where the Court of Human Rights has not delivered a judgment yet. This is really totally ridiculous, of course, I have to tell you this. And so I think it's the reason for this is that, just like a professor had pointed out, Kurds are not the only ones who are going through this. This is inherent in the world system. If you don't have a nation, if you don't have a state, if you don't have a nation state, you have nowhere to go. Either you have to accept what has happened to you and disappear, and if you decide to fight, like the PKK did and the Kurdish people who supported them, then you are branded as terrorists. So this is the dilemma. So, although there is a peace process going on, one has to say, as yet it's talks, but one has to say it's very positive talks in the right direction. But I have to also tell you that one of Mr. Öcalan's uncles died, and he wanted to see Mr. Öcalan, but he was not allowed. But now we're seeing politicians from BDP and maybe others, we don't know, going to the island and seeing Mr. Öcalan, but his lawyers, since 27th of July 2011, are not able to go and see their client. And I have to tell you that this also has been taken to the Court of Human Rights. However, and we have asked interim measurement, but this also has not occurred at all. So the lawyers, ever since then, every Wednesday and Friday, make their application to see their client, but in vain. And not just they can't go, I forgot to say, since 27th of July, all his lawyers have been put into prison. I think Margaret had spoken about that, without specifically saying most of them were Öcalan's lawyer. Okay, so who further is he? He is the one person, I don't really think I know anyone in the Kurdish movement who could have transformed and taken, gain acceptance for such unpopular steps that Öcalan has taken. For example, let's talk about women. I mean, I will come to that. But Öcalan has pushed an area open for women against the patriarchal even struggle of the Kurdish men, and to have their reactions against him. But he has successfully pushed an open room for women to organize, for women to actively participate, and for women to actively construct the society that they want to live in, but first of all, strengthen their own empowerment and knowledge and education and, union amongst themselves. So, as well as, of course, maybe I'll go into that later, but things like, he's evolved himself, not only the organization and the movement, but he has dropped the demand for a independent state. But this has happened not after 1999, but between 93 and 99. So, and he's also the author of more than 60 books, 2 of which are just outside. And these vary from different spheres, on culture, on how to kill the patriarchal man in you, not only on the freedom of women, but on how to free the men as well. So, but on religion, on very many different issues. He's really a true internationalist, I have to say, because he often says that he started with 2 words, and that was Kurdistan is a colony. And he says that, I didn't think of all these things when I started this, but I saw there was a great injustice. So as he proceeded over the 40 years, he has stumbled across problems that were not allowing the resolution of the Kurdish question even. I mean, he saw that freedom did not come with a nation state. He saw that if the women were really not free, nobody could be free. Nobody could be free, even if you had a state, which is, the state is the magical word here, maybe. But so he saw the depth of the problem that transcended the Kurdish question. He saw the problem that the state-based civilization imposed on all peoples, and that Kurds were one of the victims of this system, but they were able to successfully bring themselves out of this annihilation that were imposed on them. So he's a highly popular Kurdish leader, and he's really growing in credibility and also stature. Why? Because I suppose Kurdish people did not have any means of elections, as you know, in the four parts. Maybe now in South Kurdistan there's a bit of a change there. But so the only way the Kurdish people are able to show what they want is through the signature campaigns that they are doing. So in 2005 and 6, there was a signature campaign where 3.5 million people signed a declaration saying that Abdullah Öcalan represented them politically. So this is like a referendum, I would say, because many people went to prison for signing such a signature campaign, and also many of the signatures were, they just disappeared, and there was a lot of harassment against the people. And so there has been countless also demonstrations for his release within Kurdistan, within the 4 countries that occupy it, and as well as all over Europe and the world. So, what is the ideological transformations that Öcalan was able to do? Öcalan himself evolved, and he also evolved his organization and also the society. Between 1978 and 1993, one could say that it was mostly Marxist-Leninist ideology, strategy of protracted people's warfare, aim of united independent socialist Kurdistan. And mind you here, there's also problems, of course. I mean, for some, PKK is atheist, for some it's religious, for some it's socialist, for some it's nationalist, for some, I don't know, it's Sunni, for some it's very much Alevi. So the prejudices, in order to make sure that black and white go really into each other, that you cannot really get the problems out of each other, also is true here. So, but what Öcalan and the movement did was move from a Marxist-Leninist organization to libertarian, communalist assemblies kind of ideology and its political practice. So Öcalan adopted democratic confederalism. So he moved, let me say, in maybe more names. I mean, he was more influenced by Braudel, he was influenced by Foucault, he was influenced by Bookchin, especially when it comes to communalism, libertarian communalism. And so, since 1993 onwards, and this peace process, maybe what we are going through right now is one of the most serious peace processes of all times, but it started from 1993. And from there on, and even in the 80s, I mean, Öcalan had severe criticisms of real socialism, especially that of the Soviet Union and other places. When it comes to the state, its state approach, its approach to women, etc. And so one of his radicalism lies in the fact that the centerpiece of his paradigm is the woman's enslavement. He calls the woman first nation, first class, and first class and first colony of, where all enslavement began from. So the roots of the problem he puts down to women's enslavement. So you can see the flags changing as well accordingly as the evolvement went. And the flag with there are suns everywhere, I can see that. The flag here is the flag of the Kurdish movement, women's movement. Okay, so radical democracy. Now, democracy, we have, one could say, 2 models that maybe we all know. We have the Athenian democracy model, which is more, not representative, but more direct involvement of everyone. By everyone, of course, we have to see that women were not included in that model either, and it was more the elite that was in it as well. But instead of representative one, it's the people determining what they wanted. Or the Roman model, which is something that we are still walking on. More the representative model, seeing the people like a herd, and some people represent them and everybody will just follow, instead of self-organization, self-determination of all societal groups. So this includes gender, ethnic, religious, class, profession, and so everybody being able to determine locally what they want to do, how they want to live, economically, security-wise, to be able to make decisions themselves on local levels. So Öcalan's proposal here is not, he's not creating an alternative state, but he is creating an alternative to the state. As I pointed out earlier, it's not just the Kurdish people who experience the problems of nation-state. It's also the case in Europe, in Latin America, America in general, Africa, everywhere, We stamped out, not we, we didn't do it, but the dominant powers, the rulers, stamped out so many ethnicities. The women, what we are increasingly seeing is that we no longer possess past memory of freedom of the people, The nation-state history is just 200 years, and we're made to believe that that was the beginning and it's the end, and there is no other life before or after. But certainly, if we just do a little bit of research, like the one in Göbekli Tepe near Urfa, surprisingly where Öcalan was born, we see that Göbekli Tepe, there is archaeological site there now, and that there was very highly advanced life form there, 6,000 years prior to alphabet was, or writing was found. So, and that's why I said he's a true internationalist, because, when trying to resolve this Kurdish issue, which was bounded not only by the 4 countries in the Middle East, and I didn't want to go into the question, but sometimes I have to, but it was also the decision made by the world powers of the time. It meant that the Kurds not existing was not just the official statement of the Turkish state, or Iran, Iraq, or Syria. It was that of the whole world, That is why it took us a long time to be recognized, even as a Kurd. I always say this, it was easier in South Africa, if you don't mind me saying this. I don't want to put any parallels anywhere, but at least they were told that the prejudice against them, racism against them, was due to them being black. But we were told we were Turkish, So we were told there was no prejudice, that we were making it up. So I think the depth of the problem there maybe can be seen a little bit better. So, Öcalan in 1999 started with Democratic Republic. If you go back to his books before 1999, you will see discussions on armed struggle, when is it enough, until where, the nation state, independent state, what does it mean, or determining your fate, what does it mean? So Öcalan arrived at steps of resolution. Now, of course, I have to warn you, Öcalan puts different meanings to the words that we may use differently in our lives. For example, autonomy. We're not talking about an autonomy like, let's say, in the Basque Country, for example, or in Catalonia, or anywhere else. Or we're not talking about a democratic republic. We're not just talking about democracy as we use interchangeably in our lives, but democracy in the most sense of not representative, but a directly participant democracy. So in 1999, he gave his first theorem as to how Turkey should be shaped. He said, okay, we can resolve this in a democratic republic, and thus citizenship of this democratic republic. And then he also moved on to democratic confederalism, which was more for the Kurds. I mean, because we were not talking about a nation state for the Kurds, but there are Kurds in other countries, in Iraq, in Iran, and in Syria. And so they are of the same people, and they need to have some kind of a communication. But not just that. He's talking about a Middle Eastern confederalism as well. So, what's a democratic republic? For Turkey, but as well as for the other states, this is his project for the republic to be more democratic. And here the idea of a state still exists. We're not doing away with the Turkish nation, with the Turkish state. I mean, it can't exist as a nation state under these circumstances, of course. And we're talking about citizenship rights, which means individual and collective rights. So, but there needs to be a link established between the Democratic Republic and the democratic autonomy of Kurdistan. So what's democratic autonomy then? As I said, it's a direct involvement in decision-making at the local level, which means the production. For example, if Ahmed, the city of Ahmed, want to economically decide on something, it will not be some rich entrepreneur or some rich, capitalist coming into town and saying, okay, I'm going to make Ahmed look like, the 22nd century, whatever, So there will be assemblies, there will be a city assembly, and there is, in fact. There will be communes, and these need to sit down and decide locally how exactly they want this production or their economic way of life is going to be. Education is the same thing. I mean, in Kurdistan too, for example, there are ways of culture and living and all that different in Ahmed and different in Dersim. I mean, this is fine. They don't have to be unified. There's a whole lot of wealth in the way people live. So this should be preserved at the local level. This is also true for Kurds, but it's also true for other peoples who also live within what we geographically define as Kurdistan and also in the whole of Turkey. Active social relations, active participation in politics. Self-defense is also a situation to consider, because until today, the Turkish army, instead of being used as threats from outside, it has really been used against the Kurds. So constitutionally, legally, militarily, in every way, Kurds want to see that changed as well. So for dangers that are coming from outside, okay, there can be, of course, some kind of security arrangement, but Kurds have to be involved with the internal self-defense at a local level as well. I mean, the Kurdish movement and Mr. Öcalan, they are against professional armies because he believes this repeats the cycle of violence. So democratic autonomy will be put into practice more through libertarian municipalities, local council, and other self-organization of groups. And in parallel, the Kurdish movement foresees that women and the youth as well, because as Nazan has also pointed out, that after women there's much discrimination, not only of course in Turkey and Kurdistan, but there's much suppression of the youth as well, and subordination of them. So, democratic confederalism It is a wider implementation of democratic autonomy over a larger area, geographical area perhaps, but it requires comprehensive restructuring of the society. Because, I mean, 5,000 years of patriarchal society, the society has certainly been structured through different processes. And we believe that what is changed by the human mind and practice can also be rechanged, you know, to change our habits and ways of life and domination of men over women, women over child, or state over society, or whatever. Okay. Well, there is the roadmap outside if you want to see what the Kurdish movement's project is. I see that mostly it's the project is being practiced or being put into practice over that. And so what can we do? Maybe I'll say a little bit about that. I think that Europe has also had its share on the prejudices and the denial of the Kurdish people. And therefore, there's a need for that to be changed as well. And this can only be done through Europe, its various countries, to open up its media, its social, cultural, political arenas to the Kurdish people, and enable the Kurdish people to be able to express themselves and to, you know, move beyond being either victims or terrorists and tell everybody not only about the suffrage, but also about their idea of the future. Lift bans on several Kurdish movements, the PKK and other affiliated movements in Europe. Help educate and peace-ready the Turkish public, because you can imagine nearly 100 years they've been told just one story, that the whole world is their enemy and that they are trying to eradicate them. But this is not the truth, you know. It's often been the opposite, but this is not the truth. So we have to be able to educate to each other to see how we can live together. Of course, support the signature campaign for the freedom of Öcalan, who is the architect of the peace process. So, thank you for listening. I hope I didn't go too much over the time. Yeah, thank you very much for your patience.